thanks to X8 Web Design for sponsoring this video. Palmer Luckey is one of the youngest people to have founded 2 unicorn companies and is certainly one of the most important technologists in the 21st century. He's known by many for inventing the Oculus Rift headset that was acquired by Facebook for $2 billion before even launching their first consumer product. And after being publicly fired from Facebook, he wasted no time starting his next business that elevated him to billionaire status by being nearly the only military defense company to successfully come out of Silicon Valley. He's on a mission to disrupt the military-industrial complex by bringing the military's lagging defense systems up to speed using artificial intelligence. Understanding Palmer's motivation means to internalize the American dream because he's more than just a rags to riches story. His worldview and what he's willing to do about it is strikingly unique among his peers. He could be the man to set off a renaissance that is desperately needed if America is to keep its technological and military superiority that allows us to have and enjoy our freedoms. So how did a young Palmer Luckey find himself intertwined in a controversy that threatened to undo all he worked hard for? Why was he publicly and abruptly fired from Facebook? And most importantly, as an aspiring entrepreneur, how the heck did he build 2 unicorn companies before the age of 30? This is the little-known story of Palmer Luckey. Palmer Luckey was born September 19, 1992, in Long Beach, California. He grew up in a middle-class home. His father was a car salesman and his mother was a homemaker who did more than just cook. She instilled a love for technology into young Palmer, who would spend hours in his room building and repairing a range of gadgets. Because he was homeschooled, he focused on things he had an intense interest in. And by the time he was 14, he was taking community college classes at Golden West College and Long Beach City College. But what really contributed to his success was reading books, watching online tutorials, and being completely hands-on with things he found interesting. He played with lasers, railguns, and Tesla coils, sometimes resulting in personal injury. One time, he electrocuted himself by touching a grounded metal bed frame, and another time, he burned a gray spot into his vision while cleaning an infrared laser. These experiments weren't always cheap, so he earned money working on a dock in Long Beach. But how do you go from playing with lasers and getting electrocuted to creating a VR headset? Well, it came down to his obsession with gaming. He built a top-of-the-line PC gaming rig, adding more and more monitors until he reached 6 of them. His goal was to create an immersive type of feel to it, but regardless of how many monitors he added, he couldn't quite accomplish the immersive experience he was hoping for. He started out by researching if the technology existed, but to his disappointment, all he could find were old, heavy, non-functional ones that fell short of their promise. But growing more and more curious as to how these antique headsets worked, he would go to liquidation and auction sales to buy these once thousands of dollar prototype headsets for pennies on the dollar. He wound up collecting nearly 50 of them. He would open them, try to fix them, and even find ways to make newly available tech compatible with the old tech. And at the age of 16, with his vast knowledge and experience, he began building his own VR headsets using his own designs. He funded this by working odd jobs, fixing iPhones, coaching youth sailing, and working as a groundskeeper. His whole education experience was non-traditional, which had a lot to do with him becoming a successful entrepreneur and thinking creatively. Even though he was clearly bright, he didn't quite fit in at the top engineering schools like Stanford or MIT, so he instead opted to attend California State University. His intention in 2010 was to graduate with a degree in journalism, focusing on the tech space. He felt there was an opportunity to level up the quality of journalism because he had a deep understanding of it himself and found countless errors in other writers' work. But in 2009, while working for the university's student-run newspaper, the Daily 49er, the 17-year-old Palmer identified a few key areas that seemed to be essential to creating a good VR experience. Things like 3D stereoscopy, which would give the viewer a sense of depth for what they were looking at, lighter and more comfortable headsets, and a wider field of view to help with peripheral vision. Fortunately for Palmer, this hobby was just that, a hobby, which allowed him to do the thing he loved without the stress of figuring out a way to become profitable. Which was good because there was no clear path to success or a mainstream market for this. There was no working headset, nothing that came close to his vision. He combined the lessons he learned with the advances in adjacent fields. He wanted his VR headset to be aimed at the everyday consumer. By the time he reached the 6th version of his headset, he had achieved an ultra-realistic feel. He named his headset the Rift because the experience was so real between the real world and the virtual one. With a functional prototype, he began to build a community around the product. When the product began to draw the attention of thousands of people, he decided to drop out of college. One of these members in his community was Brendan Arib. He convinced Palmer that entrepreneurship was the only way to guarantee that VR would become a reality. Brendan was the perfect mentor because he was only 10 years older but had already built and sold a tech company for hundreds of millions of dollars. And with his help, Palmer would build a company around the Rift VR headset, a company that would take the world by storm and get acquired by Facebook for billions of dollars. And just when everything seems to be moving along, Palmer gets plunged into a national controversy. But we'll go into this further a little later in the story. The name Oculus comes from the Latin word for eye, and it was suggested by someone during a meeting. And since it was better than the alternative step into the game, it wasn't too hard for Palmer to take the suggestion and incorporate the name Oculus VR in July 2012 once the team was in place. In August, they launched a Kickstarter campaign that raised $2.5 million, 10 times the original goal. And because Palmer built an enthusiastic and loyal community, they attracted well-respected names including Cliff Bleszinski from Epic Games, David Helgeson from Unity, Michael Abrash from Valve, who all gave the product their blessing. The company also received a huge endorsement from John Carmack, who built demo games that featured the Oculus Rift headset. And with that, companies were putting aside their skepticism and bought into the true story that a young, ambitious kid relentlessly worked hard and built something truly special. The first round of funding came from 8 investors, which included Spark Capital and the well-known Founders Fund, which is run by Peter Thiel, a billionaire known for investing in contrarian entrepreneurs. Palmer raised a total of $16 million in the Series A round, followed by a $75 million Series B round. Oculus used this money to ship out their developer kit 1 and 2, and before they could ship out their first consumer version, Facebook knocked on their door and gave them an offer they couldn't refuse, an offer that would later cause all hell to come loose. Now, thankfully, you won't have to go out and raise money or spend countless hours fumbling around building a mediocre website because you spent hours watching tutorials when you should be doing what you do best, running your business instead of your business running you. That's where the sponsor of this video, X8 Web Design, comes in. They offer a free initial consulting session where they go over your brand strategy and website design to help you better connect with potential and existing clients. They will design beautiful and efficient layouts to give you the image of a big business because they operate with the heart of a small one. Their job is to help you look good online, which will help you attract more clients while making it easier for you to run and update your website. They're passionate to see your small business win, and they aren't scared to say what they believe in either, which is what made them a natural partner of the channel. Their company believes in freedom. Freedom for their clients, freedom for our teams, and freedom for our country. Whether you own or operate a luxurious country club with a golf course, or a plumbing business, or anything in between, if you need an online presence, be sure to book your free consulting session with them and simply let them know we sent you to save 10% on any services you end up using from them. The link is in the video description below. Expand your business with X8 Web Design. Thanks to X8 for sponsoring this video. Mark Zuckerberg offered Palmer $2.3 billion for a company that hadn't even delivered a consumer product yet. But the deal made Palmer a multi-millionaire. Forbes' research team estimated Palmer made a monstrous $700 million. Immediately after he made his decision to sell, he took to the Oculus subreddit to break the news and explain to his community why he accepted the offer. The deal with Facebook brought the resources needed to make virtual reality accessible to everyone. It helped turn Oculus's somewhat unpredictable future and made it much more certain. But regardless of what Palmer said, many in the community hated the decision because they knew all too well Facebook's history of lying and breaking promises. They knew that eventually Facebook would do something to kill the soul of the business. More specifically, they suspect that Facebook would eventually ruin the VR experience by adding ads and requiring users to have a Facebook account. And just like they predicted, all those fears turned out to be true. However, when you step back and put yourself in Palmer's shoes, you can't really blame him for doing what he did. Oculus was barely 2 years old, and this deal would make him richer than his wildest dreams. There was also no guarantee that VR would go mainstream and succeed. In the beginning, the partnership seemed authentic and full of opportunity. Both Mark and Palmer's visions were aligned that virtual reality would be the future, but they differed on the details. Disputes started becoming more and more frequent. They disputed over whether Oculus users should be required to sign up for a Facebook account. They argued about tracking customers' usage across VR apps for targeted advertising. Everything that the community feared and knew would happen was coming to fruition. But all those product-oriented disputes came to a halt in September of 2016, when the Daily Beast reported that Palmer donated $10,000 to an anti-Hillary Clinton meme campaign. It's important to remember, this was 2016, before all the recent events that have further escalated tensions between the right and the left. Silicon Valley is located in California, and California is a heavily blue-leaning state. So the thought that Palmer Luckey would donate money to anyone who wasn't a leftist came off to all his peers as unfathomable and something that couldn't be tolerated. Even to this day, besides Palmer Luckey, Peter Thiel is pretty much the only well-known person in tech who has publicly supported a Republican candidate and ironically happens to sit on the board of Meta as he was an early investor in Mark's company. But it seems Peter has achieved saint status and isn't as affected by his political views. Palmer, on the other hand, hasn't achieved saint status and was in a much more vulnerable situation. An Oculus competitor, the HTC Vive, was gaining momentum, and developers from companies such as Tomorrow Today Labs and Screwta Games added fuel to the fire by denouncing Palmer's political views to show how woke they were. All of this led to Facebook eventually firing Palmer. Some people say the core reason for firing him was because he supposedly funded hate speech, but the not-for-profit that he donated to, Nimble America, simply put up billboards that looked like this. Palmer ended up suing Facebook because he believed Facebook violated California law by punishing him for political activity. The billboard didn't meet the criteria for hate speech, and just because you don't agree with someone doesn't mean they are doing something wrong and that they should be fired. The courts agreed with Palmer and awarded him $100 million in damages. I believe what makes America actually great is the ability to support any party you choose, but even more fundamental than that is protecting your ability to express your opinions without fear that you will lose your source of income. Your income gives you the ability to feed and put a roof over your family's head, and taking away this ability is a form of suppression. I believe the courts ruled in favor of Palmer for this reason. Now that Palmer was free from the grasp of Facebook, he didn't waste any time and went straight into building out his new vision. He would embark on a path that very few travel and come out succeeding. He was determined to disrupt the military-industrial complex. Palmer named his company Anduril after the sword carried by Igor in The Lord of the Rings. He often states that Anduril is a products defense company more than a military contractor. His goal is to disrupt the current business model of companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing. Their business model relies on contracts consistently going over budget and deadlines being extended seemingly indefinitely. There is no incentive to do the job accurately, quickly, and under budget because they know the government will pay the bill no matter how big it is. In fact, they have been taking advantage of this for years. Anduril is exploiting this business model by using its own money to develop products and then selling a working finished product to the government. This is why their products are proving to be superior compared to the old, antiquated tech the traditional military contracting companies are currently providing. Palmer's approach saves you and me as a taxpayer money because it doesn't spend the government's money on products that may or may not work. This also gives Anduril the freedom to build creative, cost-effective products that the military doesn't even know they need yet, like defense systems to prevent drone attacks, autonomous networks, and AI systems that put it all together. This may sound like science fiction today, but it's not. These types of threats have already occurred, such as the drones that attacked the Aramco facility. When these attacks happened, it forced the military to re-examine how they look at potential future attacks. And when they looked around, guess who had the solution they needed? Anduril. There is a growing consensus that the US military has been focusing on the wrong things. Spending money on how past wars were won and using these same tools to deter conflicts is quickly becoming obsolete and even a disadvantage. Conversations are shifting into what new tools will be needed to deter conflict, and tools powered by AI will certainly be a part of that. The country with the most sophisticated AI systems will be the future leader calling the shots. Oculus made Palmer a multi-millionaire, but Anduril made Palmer a billionaire. And we need more Palmers to innovate for us rather than for our enemies abroad. We also need leaders in the tech space who love America and who aren't beholden to foreign powers.